right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode. So, we got some big, exciting news. Jake Paul will be back in the boxing ring before the end of the year, potentially. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about who the opponent could be. Let's talk about what event it could be on. And we talked about this in the last video a bit, right? We talked about what would make the most sense going forward, right? And me, you, and Boxing Key, who he's not here today, but shout out to Boxing Key. We all kind of came to the consensus that it would make the most sense for Jake to do co-mains and even undercard appearances just to keep him active against traditional boxers, right? Now, one thing we discussed about that is that doing that, you're not going to sell pay-per-views. So if you're going to go down that route, that traditional route, which I think he should, you're not going to draw pay-per-views. So scrap that. That's why it needs to be on a co-main to a big event, et cetera, et cetera. But we've just heard today, it's official, Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk is confirmed. It's either going to happen in December or January, and that is the mega fight that I think Jake should go on, right? And also, I think there might even be a little bit of a correlation, because do you remember just a month and a half ago, a month ago, whatever it was, when Usyk versus Dubois happened, Jake was obviously there in Poland. Nikisa apparently has a relationship with some of Usyk's people. And I think there might be something there. And I remember saying at the time, do you think this could be connected? Do you think they're going to try and get Jake on that card? Because obviously Fury and Ngannou, it's really close. Amanda Serrano fights a day before that, so that probably won't happen. But now that this event has been confirmed, do you think that's what Jake's comeback is going to be on the co-main of that card?
I think so, personally. I mean, they say there's no smoke without fire,
Mm.
and Jake was there for a reason, in my opinion. Jake was there for a reason in Poland, at Usyk's fight. As you said, Nikisa and Usyk's manager apparently have a close relationship. So, I think discussions have been had about, potentially having Jake Paul on the next, Tyson Fury and Usyk card, which would be absolutely fucking massive, by the way. Like, that's
100%.
one of the biggest. That's one of the biggest boxing cards of all time. It's the undisputed heavyweight championship bout between Tyson Fury and Usyk. It doesn't get bigger than that, bro. Heavyweight boxing, it doesn't get bigger than that. So if Jake Paul can get, onto that co-main, and if it is against Tommy Fury, wow, like you're talking about a mega event. So I think that's what we could be seeing, and that's exciting for me. I think that's what Jake should be doing, in my opinion. I think that it's time that his previous cards. He's had a mixture of audiences tuning in. He said the crossover influencer scene tuning in. He said the MMA community tuning in.
Yep.
He said the hardcore. He said a lot of boxing fans as well tuning in. However, on this card there will be everyone tuning in, but also every single boxing fan that will be watching this event. So if Jake Paul can be co-main on that against someone like Tommy Fury, it sets up the rematch, to be like in a grand way. So I think that's what we could be seeing.
So do you think that that's next? Because now that we've discussed the potential event, which by the way, um, if that fight is going to be in January, and this is where I'll kind of translate here. If it's going to be in January, I think they'll put Jake versus Tommy 2 on that. If it's going to be in December, maybe they'll put Tommy on that. But I think if he's going to return before the end of the year, right, which is what MVP's kind of hinted at, and Jake's hinted at recently, do you think maybe we could see Jake on that card, but also make a return before that? Because I would think if you're going to have Jake on that card, right, you're going to put Tommy 2 on there. And
Yeah,
ideally, you would want to do that in January, right? Have Tommy go through his fight with KSI when he wins, which he probably will. Take a little bit of a break, then build that fight back up. Whereas if it's in December, running that back with Tommy before the end of the year, I don't. I think Jake probably wants one more camp. So I think what will likely happen is I think personally that this Usyk fight with Tyson Fury, I think it's going to be in January. I think they're going to make it happen in January, and I think you'll see Jake versus Tommy 2 on that, possibly, right? Because they're going to want to reactivate that rematch clause before February 26th. So I
yeah,
think that fight's going to happen in January. Tyson versus Usyk, Jake Paul, Tommy Fury 2 co-main. But I think they're also going to put Jake back in there maybe November. Maybe November. Honestly, I'm not even going to say December. I think they're going to try and have him in there maybe early to mid-November, right? Get him in there with the traditional boxer. And let's talk about opponents, right? And actually, do you agree with that, though? Do you agree that, they might try and get Jake in there before that event?
I can see it. I can see it. I can see that being a possibility. Yeah, Jake has to stay active, doesn't he? He did just fight obviously Nate Diaz early August.
Yep.
However, you know, if the fight is going to be next January, then that's like what 6 7 months without another fight under the lights. So you would like to hope that Jake would have another one lined up between then and now to keep himself active. And as you say, if it is going to be against someone, it probably most likely will be more of a traditional boxer to prepare him for Tommy, because that's something that you know listen, with all due respect to Silva and Woodley, extremely tough opponents. But the one thing they were lacking, was that effective jab. They didn't really have that in their arsenal, whereas Tommy Fury obviously does have a very, very good jab. So it would make sense for Jake to line himself up against more of a traditional boxer with more of a traditional boxing stance under the lights, someone who's got a jab that Jake can deal with, find
Not
a way to
not
deal
not
with.
only just a jab, but more of a traditional boxing style because, and I've said this, like people will give Jake shit for fighting UFC fighters. These UFC guys are much tougher than most journeymen, right? But the difference is it's the style that they present that's more unorthodox, and that's I think the issue with Jake fighting these guys. It's not that it's cowardly or picking on them or whatever bullshit people want to say. It's not that. I think the issue with doing it at this stage is it's not preparing him best for a traditional boxer, which is what you saw with Tommy. And by the way, he did a fine job for a guy who's been boxing 3-4 years in there with Tommy Fury, right? Guy from the Fury family who's been boxing since he was 6. Did a good job, but, if you want the best success in that rematch, you want to get him in there with the traditional boxer, fast switch, active jab, maybe get a guy with a longer reach as well, someone that can maybe emulate Tommy's style under the lights. So I think personally, they're going to try and get him in the ring November, and then Tommy 2 could happen on that USA card. However, if that card does end up happening on December 23rd, do you think that they would try and get Jake Tommy on that? Like, do you think it'd be that quick of a turnaround, though? That's what I'm thinking.
No, I do. I do personally think they would try and get Jake and Tommy on that card too. Because listen,
So regardless if it's
um,
in December or January.
yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah, I do personally. Like it definitely gives Tommy enough time, because if he does fight mid-October, he's got the rest of October, then he's got the whole of November, then he's got most of December, So
Yeah.
I still think that's enough time, between October 14th and the end of December for
And
Tommy to
and,
get
and
back.
if you get Jake in the ring early November, you're still giving him, another month and a half until that fight. So it does I think it works out either way if it is in December, January, but I think that they will try and get him in there one time before that.
Yeah,
And
and it could even be late October. It could be late October, Jake's return.
I
I mean, Jake
mean,
did say
well,
real soon,
well,
didn't he?
well. You have to. I mean, yeah, but you have to factor in Amanda Serrano's fight, right? Which, by the
Yeah,
way,
I suppose.
big up to Amanda Serrano. First 12 rounds that are 3 minutes in women's boxing history. Big up to Amanda Serrano. That's October 27th. So I don't think they would have Jake fight. I mean, end of October, bro. It's like that weekend. So I don't think it'll be then. I think if your goal is just to have Jake go in there with someone, maybe with a similar record to him, I don't think it needs that big of a build up. And I think that's also the point I want to get at too. Will the hype be there for his next fight if it's not a Tommy Fury? If it's not, no. But that's not the point of it. It's very similar to how, Amanda Serrano can do this fight. She can do it in Florida, right? But then, as Kieran said, she could be selling out Croke Park with Katie Taylor, right? So you have to take those smaller fights just to stay active. And I think that's what Jake's next fight will be. I think it'll be a fight to keep him active, a traditional boxer, and then probably go for that Tommy Fury rematch on the Usyk versus Fury card. Let's move into opponents a little bit. I'm going to speculate that Jake's going to go in there with someone who's got maybe the same record as him, maybe a little bit different, but not someone who is as overexperienced as Tommy was. So maybe get him in there with a guy who's, I don't know, maybe 6-0, 5-0, someone who has a decent pro record, and, try to shut down that narrative. And I want to say
Yeah,
this as well, like, if Jake is going to go and he's going to sacrifice doing a big pay-per-view event with the UFC fighter, because let's not forget, like, he could very easily go, and you heard the Uriah Hall rumors, like, I'm sure he could make a fight like that happen instead. If if if
100%.
if
There's
if
names
if
out there,
if, if this if this guy's gonna go and he's gonna fight a traditional boxer that no one knows just to stay active, just to get better at the sport. Honestly, man, if you're hating on that, you're just a hater, and it is what it is, man. If this guy goes and he sacrifices a big pay per view event and he does all this just so we can get better at the sport, and just so he can get respect from the traditional boxing community, which I don't know why he doesn't have respect from already, because the guy's already doing more than a lot of pro boxers are doing at this stage in his career.
100%.
So I don't know why he doesn't have that respect already. But if he's going to then make this step to say, you know what, nah, fuck the pay-per-view event, fuck all that, I'm going to fight all these quote-unquote real boxers that everyone else fights, I'm going to fight them. That just shows how committed he is to the sport and not the bag, right?
Yeah, I mean, what more can Jake do at this point? Seriously, if he does, as you said, take a fight like that against someone that's not got the name, he's not going to be making, millions of dollars for that pay-per-view. The guy's getting in there, he's taking brain damage that he doesn't need to take. Jake Paul doesn't need this. He doesn't need to box. The guy could, lie on the beach all day at Puerto Rico. He doesn't need to, risk his brain and risk his life and things like that. So at this point, if you don't respect Jake Paul, I don't know what else there is to say. Listen, there's so many, famous boxers that have achieved so much in the game that respect Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, Oscar De La Hoya, Vander Holyfield. The list is endless of boxers who have given Jake his flowers for, what he's brought to the sport of boxing. But if this doesn't convince everyone at this point that this guy truly does love the sport, if he hops in there with a guy, in front of in a smaller venue, not on a pay-per-view, not as much money as going to go towards Jake for that fight. At the end of the day, if you can't respect that, then you're just, as you said, you're just a complete hater, and you'll never respect anything Jake Paul does.
And by the way, I want to say this too, right? Even like when Jake announces whoever this next opponent is, because as I said, I don't think it'll be Tommy next. I think they'll get him in there before that rematch. I don't want to see any oh, look at this guy's record. Like, if Jake gets in there with a guy who's maybe, let's say, 6-1, right? I don't know, 5-2, whatever it may be, right? Not a crazy record. For the people who are gonna say, because you already know they're gonna say, oh, you're fighting journeyman. Well, aren't these the guys that the real boxer Tommy Fury that you all like to call, oh, this is the guy, the first real boxer that beat Jake? Do you know who Tommy Fury was fighting? Because in his first fight, he fought a guy who was 10-102. In his second fight, he fought a guy who was 0-26. In his third fight, he fought a guy who was 2-26, 0-11, 0-9. He fought his first guy with a winning record, which is Jordan Grant, in his fifth pro fight, who was 2-0 at the time of fighting him, who he only gave a few weeks of notice to fight in the first place. So if Jake goes and he fights a guy who's got a record like 5-2, or whatever it may be, it's not this crazy record. Don't forget that these are the type of opponents that every other boxer fights in their first 10 fights. And this is a guy who has no amateur career, right? Let's talk about Tommy Fury. Tommy Fury had an amateur career, not an extensive one, but he had time in the amateurs, built himself up, and these were the opponents he was fighting. So if Jake Paul goes and he announces a fight and this next opponent doesn't have this crazy record, these are the real boxers that you guys have been begging him to fight. These are the real boxers. So, that excuse is going to be invalid too. And if he beats this person, right, if he beats him, does that mean Jake Paul is a real boxer now, that he's beaten an opponent that every other boxer fights? Will that then turn him into a real boxer in those people's eyes, do you think? Or do you think it'll be a different rule?
I mean, I'm just anticipating more excuses, to be honest. But it's one rule for Jake and another for everyone else. It's just, it doesn't matter what Jake does in this sport. He could literally beat Canelo. And again, people would just, talk crap on it. Honestly, there's nothing Jake can do to convince these people that, of getting respect. At the end of the day, if someone has got so much hatred in their heart that they don't want to respect someone, they'll never give them it. At the end of the day, man, the real ones know that what Jake's doing is great for the sport. He's doing shit that not a lot of boxers do at the start of their careers. He's taking on far tougher level of opposition than most boxers do at the start of their careers. So, as I said, if you can't respect Jake Paul at this point, you never will respect Jake, bro. So, that's just the sad reality of it.
So, overall, just to wrap it up, I think that Jake Paul is going to fight a traditional boxer, someone with a record similar to his. I think that he'll fight that boxer maybe November, and then I think that will lead them into the Tommy Fury 2 fight, the rematch, which will probably happen, I would speculate, on the Fury versus Usyk card. That's my prediction. What about you?
I'll go with that, bro. Yeah, I think so too. Stay active against a boxer, a boxer from traditional boxing background. Get that win and then go into that Tommy Fury rematch. With that under your belt. That sounds good to me.
100%. Let us know what you guys think in the comments. There's tons of speculation about what his next fight will be, so leave your comment down below on what you think Jake Paul's next fight will be, and I guess we'll find out soon. You know what I'm saying? It's only a matter of time until we find out. But make sure you leave a comment, like the video, hit subscribe, and we will see you guys later.